You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. thechrisvossshow.com. Welcome to the show, my family and friends. As always, we love to having you guys on the show, being a part of our life, helping us improve your life and all that good stuff. Giving you the Chris Voss Show glow. Remember, the Chris Voss Show is the family that loves you but doesn't judge you, at least not as harshly as your mother-in-law. As always, we bring you the smartest people on the show. For 15 years, 3 to 4 shows a weekday, 15 to 20 a week. We've been bringing you the smartest people, the White House advisors, the CEOs, the billionaires, the, who else? The astronauts, the journalists, all the smartest people who spent hundreds, thousands, a lifetime of hours to provide you with the data that you need to improve the quality of your life and everything else. It's been a work of love, but we ask one small thing from you. Of course, this is the setup for the guilt and shaming, where we ask you to refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. So reach out to people and say, subscribe to the Chris Voss Show, or else don't do that. I'm just kidding. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, YouTube.com/Chris Voss, and Chris Voss one on the TikTok. And if you want to talk to the show on Facebook, you can go to Chris Voss, Facebook.com as well. Today we have an amazing young lady on the show. She's going to be talking to us about leadership, which is one of my favorite topics, and entrepreneurism and all that good stuff. And she's going to have some great stories of survival as well with cancer. We have Claire Chandler on the show with us today. She is the president and founder of Talent Boost. She specializes in aligning HR and business leaders so they can deliver strategic outcomes both today and in the future. She taps in over 25 years of experience in people leadership, human resources, and business ownership to help leadership teams work together more effectively and in less time with less cultural resistance so they can accelerate their business growth. She has broad-based expertise in management, team due diligence, organizational design, acquisition integration, and onboarding, strategic planning, executive coaching, and performance acceleration. Ladies and gentlemen, she does it all. Welcome to the show, Claire. How are you?
Thanks, Chris. I'm doing well. I love that you called me young lady. So already I am so happy to be here.
There you go. That's what we do. I mean, I have to just go with what we see. So give us your .coms. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, so clairechandler.net, which is a little bit more of my personal side, and then my business website is talentboost.net.
There you go, talentboost.net. There's an ebook, too, that you have on there we'll talk about, and then there's another one you have in development. You have one that's called The Culture Effect, the 5 gears that drive successful M&A integration. Tell us a little bit about that if you want to lead off with that. Give us an overview of what people can expect out of that when they find it on your site.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So it seems to be more of the trend now that a lot of organizations, especially in the United States, are growing through mergers and acquisitions. Mm-hmm. They have found that trying to grow their company one hire at a time is just not the best way to best path toward world domination, right? So M&A is kind of the way to go. And what they are often finding is they've got these brilliant growth strategies. I'm sure you've got all the big brain trusts that come onto your show. I'm sure a lot of them have M&A experience. Mm-hmm. And they're always enamored with their growth strategy. And then they are always somewhat surprised when the people in the company that they have acquired dig their heels in and resist at every turn. So the culture effect is all based on the premise that you have to engage the people, you have to build and nurture the culture that is the foundation of that organization if you are truly going to implement your growth strategy and thrive as a business.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, mergers and acquisitions so important for all this stuff. Now, when you wrote The Culture Effect, what are some of the 5 gears that you tease out?
Yeah, so they're all around people development, and they're around people. I'll call it engagement, and I don't want people to sort of back away from that and say, oh, that's all the squishy HR stuff. It's actually not. It is actually absolutely fundamental to growing a business the right way. If you don't have the right people who join your organization, who kind of buy into your mission, who are put in the right roles at the right time, who have the right motivation, who trust your leaders, who follow where you want to go, and who kind of align their passions, their roles, their skills, their ideas with where you're trying to get to as an organization, you're dead in the water. So that book is really geared toward, no pun intended, 5 of the main drivers that really help to accelerate growth through engaging your people, giving them reasons to believe, and finding ways to spark their engagement, their buy-in, their motivation, so they can help you co-create a successful strategy.
Definitely. So tell us a little bit about your hero's journey. I know that you went through some things and that got you to this point. Give us your story.
Yeah, so I am a self-professed both cancer survivor and corporate survivor. I spent the first 20 or so years of my career within the walls of corporate America. By the way, after swearing I was never going to work in corporate, like that just wasn't in my DNA. I'm the product of a school teacher and a small business owner. But alas, that's where the opportunities were. So I spent the first, 20 or so years in corporate. What really got me to break out of that, and I will call it a gift in retrospect, was that I got diagnosed with cancer. This was early in 2011. I was the vice president of human resources. I was traveling all the time. I was going 150 miles an hour, and I literally had to take a month off of work. I had to go full stop. I had to go from 150 to 0. I had to deal with this. This was not something that I could postpone. This was not like a vacation where I could just, this was a non-refundable ticket towards surgery, right? Yeah. So had to deal with that. And the reason I call it a gift is because when I had the surgery and then took that time off, I finally couldn't outrun that voice in my head that had been trying to ask me for far too long, are you really doing what you're passionate about? And I had to acknowledge the answer was no. Wow. And so, once you have an answer like that, you really have to do something with that. You owe it to yourself to do something with that answer. And so that was really what was the catalyst for reevaluating where I was in that corporate rat race and getting onto the path toward my entrepreneurial journey.
There you go. So, I mean, when you got the cancer, did it put you in a state where you kind of looked around your world and thought, I might have limited time here, or maybe the future is limited. I need to do more of what I want or what I feel is important. Is there's a lot of reevaluation many people take in that journey.
Yeah, no doubt. It was definitely the reminder, the kind of the sledgehammer between the eyes that life is too short. Now, spoiler alert, I am cancer free now. I was very fortunate. Thank you. I was very fortunate to be diagnosed early enough that we could kind of deal with this through surgery and treatment. And, I have scans and lab work and follow-ups for, forever into my future. So it wasn't that sort of wake up call around life is too short, like it was a terminal diagnosis. But it really did remind me that we only have so many years on earth, and so many of those years that are, years when we do have our health, when we do have our wits about us, and we do have an opportunity to make an impact in the world. But that's why I call it a gift, because I think had I not had that wake up call and that reckoning with myself, I don't know that I would have taken the leap.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how these cathartic times sometimes in our life, these pauses, these interruptions can awaken us. We're kind of on the train and everything's going, and you're just kind of running the rat race, if you will, spinning the hamster wheel. And, these interruptions make us go, hey, we got to take a moment to look around. And maybe that's an important lesson. We need to stop more and take a look around. Maybe we need to ask ourselves more, is this really what I want to do? Is this really how I want to do it? Is this really important to me? Am I living my purpose, or am I living my values there? So how did you start your own consulting business? What was the pathway there?
So I would love to be able to tell you that I had this bulletproof business plan from day one. But alas, that is not true. And I pride myself. I consult with corporations now from the outside looking in, and I pride myself on being deeply self-aware and honest with yourself and vulnerable and all of that stuff. So it was certainly not a journey that was well plotted out. I just knew I had to take it. I had to take that leap. One of the things about kind of taking stock of where I was and what I was going to try in terms of going out on my own, I dealt with a lot of if onlys. What I mean by that is, it's so easy to talk ourselves out of our comfort zone. To talk ourselves out of moving out of our comfort zone, I should say. And so for me, there were all these if only I had a little more experience in what I'm really passionate about. If only I had a business plan. If only I had a backlog of clients ready to work with me. And they just started to pile up. If only I didn't have more cancer treatments ahead of me this year. It was all of those things. And one of the things that I did was consult with people that I trusted. And I didn't invest in a formal business coach for a couple of years later, but I did reach out to a few people who knew me professionally, who cared about me personally, and that I could sort of take this idea to them. And I remember a couple of conversations with some of those people, and I said, am I nuts? Like, to think that I could make it out on my own as a consultant and an advisor and a small business owner and an entrepreneur, given where the economy is, given the fact that I'm on an executive track and I'm in a cushy, safe corporate job and all of those things, am I nuts? And not one person said, when I presented them with that, not one person said that I was. In fact, a couple of them said, I've been waiting for your call. I've been waiting for you to wake up to the fact that you've been wasting your gifts.
They knew this is what was good for you all along.
Yeah. And, and it's like anything else, right? Like the people in your world who see you, who know you deeply and care about you, they can see through your forest more clearly than you can. But just because they tell you the right thing to do does not mean you're going to do it until you're ready and the universe is ready. So in those early days, while I was still working in corporate, I was reaching out to a couple of those people that I considered personal advisors. And, they helped me think out loud, which is so important, so that you're not just stuck wrestling with the voices in your head, but they helped me think out loud what this could look like, what this could be, and to get over myself and say, with all those if onlys, F the if, take the leap and learn as you go. There
you go. I mean, that's kind of the way entrepreneurism works. Like I've talked about this on the show ad nauseum, I'm sure, but you have to start. You have to begin. It's like life, you can't sit in the womb going, well, I'm going to come out when it's perfect and everything's,
it's so comfy in here. It's warm.
Yeah, it's warm. Yeah, it's fed.
To sleep all day.
I think I'm going to use this. I just thought this up, but this is a perfect analogy because I get people in business to me all the time. They're like, hey, I'm going to start my own company. I'm like, okay, do it. And they're like, oh, I'm waiting until everything's perfect. I'm like, there's going to be a perfect time. Well, I'm waiting until the money's right, and I've kind of got the business model down right. I'm trying to write that business model mission statement. I'm like, I've never written a business model mission statement in my life. Like for 20, 30 plus companies, I've never written a mission statement. Mainly because there's some business we started that within 30 days we were flipping the model. And we didn't want that model to lock us in. I had a model in my head. You kind of, when you start enough companies, you there's kind of a printing process that's kind of standard to it. But, you kind of have a general idea. But sometimes I've dived into companies and you're just like, no, I think our clients are telling us we need to go over here, not over there. That was a good idea at the time, but follow the money. But I like this analogy and so I'll meet these people like, year after year. Hey, you'll see them a year later. Hey, did you start that company? No, I'm still talking about it. Yeah, I'm going to start it, in 3 years, 5 years go by and, they're still talking about it. But I like this analogy of this, it's like the person who's sitting in the womb going, I'm not coming out until everything's perfect, until my parents, have enough money to raise me and pay for college. And my parents, have worked out all their psychological trauma from childhood that's going to make a bad childhood for me. I'm not coming out until everything's perfect. Well, that's not how life works. It throws you right out as a baby into the bathwater and basket, whatever you want to say, and it's sink or swim. And entrepreneurism is the same way. You just got to get into it, and a lot of it is problem solving, a lot of it is learning, education, and it's just like birth. You got to jump in or jump out in this case.
Yeah, well, and I think it's one of the biggest dividing lines between entrepreneurs and leaders and executives of large organizations. Entrepreneurs understand that perfection is a myth.
Yeah.
And leaders of large organizations are still waiting for that. I like I said, I advise and counsel executive leaders in big organizations, and I constantly have to remind them, if you're waiting until you get 100% of the data that you need to make a decision, your competitors are already too far down the road. Like you're never going to get to that point. You're waiting for the perfect scenario. And entrepreneurs kind of get it. I think the biggest difference is they know that they have to pivot. You ask a leader of a large established organization to pivot, it blows their minds. They can't do it.
Yeah. I mean, you look at, I've had friends that were on the original iPhone building team. And when, Steve Jobs is like, we're going to build this phone and you're going to put everything in it. You're going to put a dial phone in it. You're going to put an email in it, mail, and you're going to, messaging, and you're going to put all this stuff into this unit, radio and CD player basically. And you're going to jam it all in and it's going to work. And they're just like, well, how are we going to do that? He's like, I don't know. Figure it out. And so they literally had to figure it out. In fact, when Steve Jobs announced the iPhone, the story's out there now. My friends told it to me years before, but it wasn't working. In fact, the only time it did work was when he presented on stage. Up until the time, even the week that they were locked in the I forget the name, Mascarpone Center or whatever it's called in San Francisco. Even the week they were locked in there with Steve Jobs, practicing his presentation, they were trying to get it to work, and every fourth action or app that you would open, it would crash on the fourth movement. So they had multiple phones in the desk for him, and he was supposed to switch between the phones, and he didn't. He stuck with the one, and the one single time that it didn't crash after 4 movements was when he was on stage live. And so you can imagine how it might turn out different. But, that's an example of where you've just got to jump in with both feet, and you've got to fight your way through it, and you got to have some luck and some grit. And it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be messy. It's going to be trauma. It's going to be, but that's kind of the beauty of it, because that's how you learn. That's how you shape it. Maybe another good analogy that just came to me in my head is it's kind of like a blacksmith who turns a sword, some blunt piece of steel by brutalizing it into this beautiful shaped, almost perfect cutting device that's beautiful. It takes that hammer and anvil and the ugliness of the blacksmith shop to pound that into something that's worth something.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah. I'm just full of analogies this morning. Just really on one.
I'm still in the baby in the womb.
Are you?
It's such a perfect analogy.
I'm not sure the jumping. Awesome. I'm jumping out of the womb idea is a good idea, though. We probably should have the lawyers put a disclaimer on that. That doesn't sound like that's going to work out very well. Jumping out of the womb. It's like I have this vision in my head, like mom's getting surprised, like ta-da! I'm here. That might scare some people on the thing. The baby's head goes around, and
pretty soon they're going to walk out with the iPhone in hand. I mean, it's scary.
I'm surprised they don't now.
It's coming.
I'm not sure. I when you really think about how much mothers and fathers and everybody in this world walks around with an iPhone, I'm not surprised that hasn't merged into our DNA where you just birth with one.
And they're going to just get updates every trimester, like right before they come out of the womb, right? It's like move outside because you're interfering with the update.
Yeah, it's like basically some people press their head up against the mother's belly to hear the baby's heartbeat. Now you just do it to hear the notification beeps. So there you go. So now you help people become better leaders. You help businesses become more successful. Why do businesses fail to achieve growth strategies?
How long is your show? I mean, there are a lot of reasons. There are a lot of reasons. I think a couple of them we already sort of touched upon, which is they're waiting for perfection, right? They're waiting for all the stars to align. They're waiting for all of the data to come in. And, there are studies after studies and experts that are even smarter than you and I are, although I think we're pretty smart, who kind of remind us that some of the biggest hurdles or obstacles or landmines to business growth, the majority of them center around the capacity and capability of the people at the top. So I know we already talked about kind of the people throughout an organization. It's super important that they're aligned, they're bought in, they're given an opportunity to kind of co-create. But it's got to come from the top. I talk to so many leaders who just have this mistaken belief that culture in an organization, one, is not fundamental, not true, and two, that it bubbles up organically from the ground level of an organization. And it's just flat out not true. Mm-hmm. The leaders are the ones who shape the culture, and culture drives success. And so
you really find that leaders just think that culture, I just step in here and I just yell orders and everything works out. That really is a lot of mentality that's out there, huh? That explains everything, actually. Well, that explains everything.
I mean, when you kind of think about, and there's a lot of stories about this as well, like the generation of leadership that is, I don't want to say dying off, but okay, in reality, they're dying off, are from a bygone era, around the industrial economy. They're all about command and control. These are people who at the beginning of the industrial economy came out of the military. So you had a bunch of retired military officers and generals and admirals and all of this now running companies. And so that mentality of do as I say, not as I do, take the hill and don't ask questions. Mm-hmm. You're not, we're not here as a democracy. We're here, for you to follow orders. The generations coming into the workforce now, they don't play that way. They don't want it like that. And while we're on the subject, I know millennials get a real bad rap, but I want to give credit to millennials. Now I'm a Gen Xer, but these millennials kind of they're onto something here. I've never seen a generation previous to them who advocate for themselves so strongly in the workplace. And so it's there are things that we can take from every single generation in the workforce. And I think for the millennials, they're kind of paving the way for, you have to advocate for yourself. Don't wait for a cancer diagnosis to stand up and say, I deserve more.
I don't know. I asked for an egg and cheese sandwich at McDonald's yesterday, and they left the egg off, and they seemed to be more interested in their phones, and they really didn't. It took like an hour to calculate in the drive-through.
Well, I was just going to say, what's even scarier? Browns. Yeah, not only that they forgot the egg, they don't know how to make change. What is the deal?
Yeah, and so I mean, it took seriously the longest time I think I've ever spent at McDonald's waiting for them to tally a Coke. Wow. A hash brown and an egg McMuffin, and then I didn't get the egg. And it's I don't know, who orders the egg McMuffin without the egg? I don't know. Maybe some people do. I was kind of blown away. But you're right. They do advocate for themselves. I want them to just take more value in their work and care about their work more. I don't know, they're not a monolith. There's, sometimes I complain as that old man, Clint Eastwood, who's on the lawn with the hose going, get off my lawn. And I feel that way. And I think they have a great future ahead of them. But, some of my folks that work with them, they have a hard time with staying in the lane. Here's your job, you do this. Well, I want to go do some other things. This isn't Instagram or TikTok. You've got to do this job learn this job, do it well, excel at it, and then you can go, move the ladder and do something else. So I don't know, man. They're going to redesign everything, so it's their world now. I don't really have any say in it. We see what goes on with the, working remotely. We see what goes on where they tend to job hop a little bit. They do like to find stuff that enlivens them. And I think they're going to challenge a lot of leadership and managers. And that's what they seem to be doing, where you can't just phone in as a leader and be like, well, they'll just do their jobs and stuff. You've got to inspire them. You've got to motivate them. You've got to touch the hearts and minds of them to, make them feel like there's something of value or purpose in what they're doing. I think you've got to kind of try and get in their heads and find out what they want more. So I think in the end, it's going to demand more from leaders. I could be wrong, but I think that's what it's going to do. There's going to be more leadership techniques. There's going to be more impression towards or pushing towards culture. And I live in my own culture bubble because I've been building culture in our companies all our life, and I understood the importance of it. But I'm like you said, a lot of companies haven't done it, and that's probably why they're seeing this overturn of these Gen Zers so much, and because they're looking for good leadership. I think most people are.
Yeah, and I think millennials will tell you what they need. I think more so than the previous generations. The rest of us sort of knew what we needed, but maybe we're waiting around for someone to ask us. These I can't believe I'm at the point where I'm going to say these kids today are going to advocate, and they're going to say, what they need, what they're questioning, where they want to belong. And I think to your point, it is already requiring of leaders to customize much more so the way that they interact with everybody on their team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes all the difference, and I think it will challenge them. Hopefully, it will maybe develop them into better leaders. But I don't know. It's their game to win or lose. So you talk about the 3 Ps of sustainable business growth. Can you tease that a little bit about what the 3 Ps are?
Yeah. So the headline, or I guess the punchline, is it's people, processes, and performance.
That kind of ties into what we were just talking about, people.
Yeah, totally. And if you kind of picture, this is going to be a flashback, and millennials are going to lose their mind for a second. But if you picture that in the Venn diagram, right? Did I just give you a flashback? But where those 3 kind of converge, right? You have to have. It's not just about getting more people. Because right now, this war for talent that we've been talking about for 20, 30 years is here. But you have to have the right people, and they have to have the right motivation. And we sort of talked about that. The processes, you have to have a mechanism for replicating success and filtering out inefficiencies. Because I think one of the things in this faster and faster paced world is we don't have time for inefficiency. We don't have time to keep tripping over the same mistakes. We have to iterate, we have to fail forward, and we need to have processes that are going to help us replicate success. And then, of course, performance in all the different forms that takes has to come together, right? You're in a business for a reason. You're not in a business to fail it. You're in a business to grow it, or at least to maintain and sustain that. And so all 3 of those have to come together, and they have to converge around some common purpose. That's kind of the sweet spot in the middle of that. But those have to come together and coalesce if a business is actually going to succeed in the long run.
Definitely. No, it's something where people just need to figure it all out, and it's not just a monolith of where I'm back to the monolith.
I love that. 2001 Space Odyssey going on there.
Just do it. And like we were just talking about with Gen Z and even millennials, the people are really important, and helping them achieve what they want. Servant leadership in helping, knowing what the guts are of people. What do you want to achieve? We're here to help you. People aren't just like, hey, I want to slave away at a company anymore. And those are dead and gone, especially with remote working. Now, to build on what we were talking about earlier, people have so many different choices in the world. You're seeing this incredible rise of unions. I don't think I don't know, you tell me, I don't think a lot of leaders have realized where we're at right now, basically what's happened is I've been hearing about this for 40 years, that the boomers were going to retire and they were going to leave a glut in the workforce market because we weren't breeding like they did. And so their large generation was going to end up being kind of a hole in the economy. And with COVID, what they did is they left early, and some Gen Xers did too. They took their retirements and said, I don't want to work in a place where I'm going to die, and I got better things to do. And they cut out early. And so we're left with a much smaller, much less skilled group of people. In fact, I think I was reading in the New York Times recently that out of every day, there's like 10,000 of them where they're retiring. And these are people that are highly skilled. They've got a whole career of 40, 50 years working, and they're cutting out of the market. And they said that for every 7 people that are skilled workers, like even in trades, people that do welding or construction or whatever, and they have those really high-end trade sort of recognition, that they know how to do stuff really well because they've been doing it for decades. For every 7 people that's being replaced or that's going into retirement, there's only 1 person to replace them. And these aren't people who've been doing this for a long time. These are people that are like, hey, I just began last week. And so not only do we have a glut in skill-based stuff that's happening right now and draining, but we don't have enough employees to fill the gap. And we hear we've got this economy that seems to be doing incredibly well in spite of everything and demand. And it's really hard for people to hire right now. And there's not, I just went out to a restaurant on Sunday, and they're like, yeah, we just went to, we give you the little number to put at your table. We don't do service anymore to the table. And I'm like, what the hell? And they're like, yeah, we just don't have enough employees to do service at the table. And it's a restaurant that's designed for service at the table. It's just, to have servers. In fact, I was kind of upset about it. I'm just like, I come here and I pay a lot of money to have like the service. That's kind of your thing.
I don't want the cafeteria experience.
Yeah, if I want that, I'll go to McDonald's.
Right.
But and so these,
so
we're seeing these unions that are going, hey man, we realize that you're going to have to deal with us now. And you've got these employees like the Gen Zers that can hop around if they don't want to, because they're going to find what leadership and purpose they have. And so people really need to get it. Basically, that's the big picture.
It's so interesting because, again, to your point, we've been talking about this for decades. We have been warned, and we have warned others that this war for talent, this scarcity of talent was coming. Mm-hmm. I think the global pandemic was the wake-up call for a lot of people, much like for us individuals who have gone through a cancer experience or some other, sort of catalyst. That really woke up a lot of people to, it doesn't have to be like this. I don't have to spend my remaining years on this earth working this way or for these people or doing this job. But I think, part of it too was there was this, I think, myth that the union employees, the people who are boots on the ground in manufacturing and other blue collar industries, that they could be replaced 7-1 by automation, by technology, by better engineered processes. And we are finding that is not true. Mm-hmm. And I think the other big challenge that you layer on top of that across any industry is people aren't staying with a company for their entire career anymore. At any level of an organization. It used to be, and my parents used to sort of say this, it was like, in my day, the company you started with was the company you retired with. They actually said in my day, I remember that, the pound of the table.
Wait, I said that all the time.
But I mean, like when I was telling them, I think I spent my first job out of college, I spent like 4 years, and I said, I was going to move on to this other opportunity, and I got the in my day speech. You didn't move around. But it's, what's interesting is not only are the individual contributors in your workforce moving around, the average tenure of an executive leader is somewhere between 3 and 5 years, and not just the CEO, it's everybody in the executive wing. So there's a lot of changeover and a lot of potential turbulence if organizations don't understand that they need to, first of all, find ways to retain and engage and grow their talent, build it from within, but also appreciate that people are not going to stay around for years and years anymore. So how do you bring in the best of what they've got, blend that so that your organization outlasts their tenure?
Definitely. And you have a vibrant culture that gives people that purpose and stuff. You know, I mean, people quit jobs not necessarily over money. I think the stats and data show that they quit over leadership.
That's
they
right.
quit over the bad bosses. They quit over uninspiring, no one wants to go to the funeral home company. I'm not talking about funeral home companies. I'm talking about, you go there and just every day is like kind of like a slow moving funeral procession where it's dead inside and there's no inspiration. I think, maybe, we give a lot of hand wringing to the Gen Zers, but, maybe they figured it out because they've looked at, all the things that have gone on since the 80s where, it's more about shareholder value and you can dump employees 40,000, 50,000 at a time and they don't care. And they've just finally accepted it. And they're just like, hey, you know what? If you don't care, then we're not going to care either. So we're going to flip around to what we want to find we want to do. And you can just take your little thing because we realize you're going to be transactional with us. So we're going to be transactional with you. How about that?
Yeah. And I think what's been interesting about that, and some organizations are starting to understand and try to leverage this, is the rise of the gig economy. It's so interesting. Right before the lockdown, and if I say lockdown, everybody kind of knows what that is, right? But prior to like the big blow up of the global pandemic, I was working with clients on their longer term strategic plans, and they were projecting out 20 years. So when I say strategic plan, they were looking at a 20-year horizon. Now, on the other side now of the pandemic, that is absolutely laughable because what hubris these companies had, and I was right there along with them. It's like, let's paint that 20-year horizon and let's build a roadmap to get there. But what's interesting is a lot of these larger organizations who have since scaled back, gotten realistic and said, we're going to build a 5-year plan. And then we know by year 3, we're going to have to massively evolve it. But they were starting to get a glimpse into the potential value of tapping into the gig economy, where not the entire workforce needed to be full-time employees on our benefits with some sort of massive compensation scheme. And now we're seeing that more and more. They're not necessarily calling them gig workers, but I'm loving the shift. I'm loving the evolution that even these larger established organizations are starting to look at more creative ways to borrow and build and buy talent to help contribute toward their longer term strategy.
There you go. How do you think AI, you referenced AI in there, how do you think AI is going to change the marketplace too? I mean, when you really think about what we've talked about throughout the show, it's actually the thing that might save our butts in the end when it comes to people, not enough people being in the job market. We've got to somehow make that productivity curve happen with less people. Yeah.
So there's kind of two camps in my view around AI. Those who are absolutely scared by it, and they are typically your HR departments in larger organizations. AI completely scares them. And then there are those who are really intellectually curious about the potential of AI. And sitting here today having this conversation, I think we are only getting a little bit of a glimpse and a glimmer into what AI could become. But I'm starting to see companies taking, the Chat GPT or the Google Bard engine and starting to build that into much more robust, I don't want to say intelligent because that's AI, but really robust systems for taking that engine and really making that into something. I think it is going to evolve, first of all, as a technology beyond what we can imagine right now. And then I think the utility of that in terms of enabling individuals and organizations to amplify their impact is going to be, I think it's going to be crazy. I think it's going to be explosive, and I think it's going to be for the better, because I think a lot of these larger organizations, everyone that I work with, they are wrestling with in some way consolidating and centralizing, whether they call it a shared services model or, more of a transactional, like all of the back office, time intensive, but non-value added activities from their main employees. And they're trying to centralize that. And they've struggled with it for all the reasons, right? It's very complex. We've been really lax about documenting our best practices. So it's not a simple thing of just slicing it off and centralizing it. There's all the change resistance of letting go of that transactional work that, people find, equate that to job security. We have a scarcity of talent right now, folks. So don't worry about losing your job if you're doing it well, right? If you're really committed to that. But I think AI, the application of AI into that is going to be really interesting for large organizations sort of dipping their toe into that water.
And on top of that, I think you nailed it. On top of that, employees or entrepreneurs out there need to really adopt to AI too, because the people who are going to be the most valuable in skills based, and in any job are going to need you to be able to master AI, or at least try to master it. It's moving very fast. Even I'm sitting going, can you just slow down a little bit, man?
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's exciting though. I mean, you have to,
it is.
You have to be curious about it. You have to be intrigued.
Yeah. And the people who master it are going to be the people who do well. And they're going to, because it's such a game changer in enhancing everything. Like, we use it for the show. We'll put in questions and say, hey, what questions would you ask this person? I don't even have to tell them who they are. They just go find who they are and they just come up with questions, show notes. I mean, we have several different services we've been trying lately to do show notes, and they put out these incredible show notes with quotes and stuff. And I'm just like, geez, we never did any of that. We're, and it doesn't like, I don't know, a minute or something, 30 seconds. Yeah. It's freaking crazy. It gives us a whole beautiful show notes sort of thing. But being able to master it's going to be the thing. I'm a big believer in we need to open up immigration more. We don't seem to understand as Americans how immigration is what made us such a great country, being a melting pot and being the central hub of all the ideas that came to us. Nuclear bombs, nuclear fission, nuclear, all that stuff. Those people were developing that in Germany. And if we hadn't welcomed them and got them over here, we might be living in a whole different world. Between China, and their population being a large market, it really hasn't. It's starting to kind of fail, and part of it's their one-child policy that's nipped them in the butt. Yep. But India, is rising as probably the most biggest future economy as ever, and they're nuclear power too as well. They don't really need a military. They have a lot of freaking people and a very diverse potential economy. And so we've got to get more people in this country with great ideas. There's no one person who's got all the great ideas. In fact, if you look at a lot of the CEOs of companies now, they're all immigrants who've come from other countries. CEO of Google grew up on a dirt floor in India. Steve Jobs was an immigrant with his family. There's no one person who has all the great ideas. And some of them are life-changing. What we were talking about before with AI, they just pulled I don't know, when did the iPhone come out? 2005, 2007 officially?
Around there, yeah.
And then I don't know when the exact opening of the App Store was, but the App Store was a game changer. And it created so many industries and so many jobs. And it created my job. We were able to podcast through, the craziness of microphones and everything else. Radio became democratized where anybody could do it. And it was a game changer. It changed everything, the App Store. And now, I think just last week, they just dropped it, basically an App Store for ChatGPT and some of these other things for AI, where you can literally custom design it. And so everyone's going to be turning this into SaaS businesses and other things as well. So it's a crazy time to be alive, but it's definitely something where, like you say, people are going to have the potential to compete with companies that want people to work for them, as opposed to people like, hey, I'm going to go be an entrepreneur. I'm going to make my own thing. So either you come up with something better when it comes to culture, fun, and purpose in my life, or I'm going to go do something else.
Well, and figure out a way to do that where you don't have to have borders in terms of your workforce. I think, other than the manufacturing industry where you very much have to be connected to the machinery as part of your job, we're in an extraordinary time because we can tap into talent in all the corners of the world that you just mentioned, including Africa, by the way. So I have a friend of mine through my extended network who is living in Africa and is teaching people in Africa customer service skills so that can become the next outsourced area for customer service. Does that not blow your mind? I mean, it's crazy because we don't have to physically have people in the same building in the same location anymore. So even the immigration conversation that people lose their minds over, we can tap into talent and intellectual, the knowledge economy without requiring people to actually move here.
Yeah, I think remote work is going to give us a lot more freedom as companies try to adapt to that. Africa was a great country rising, and then AIDS hit it, and AIDS wiped out, I believe, 1 out of 4, and they wiped out their young generation, their old generation. It was devastating to the future of that continent, and now, like you say, I think it's rising. I mean, they're a resource-rich country. Sadly, they're being just ripped apart or taken advantage of by China and Russia. But of course, we're the ones feeding that because we're demanding those resources through chips. But we've ignored, as a country, Africa for a long time. I think President Biden's going there for some economic recognition here soon, or maybe he was supposed to go there before the Israeli Hamas blow up. But it's definitely a country we need to spend more time focusing on, and the potential there is huge because, I mean, they're a research-rich country. If they could somehow obtain some sort of balance without all the wars and civil wars and all that stuff they've had going on that have really held them back. And I think AIDS, I suppose, is under some sort of control there. There you go. Let's as we round out, let's get a tease out on the new book you're working on that people can hear about. What's going on with the book that you're working on, and is it going to be available on your website or Amazon? What's the status on that?
Yeah, so I am currently drafting a new book that's going to be a real deep dive into my methodology that I follow when I'm working with my corporate clients. It is called Growth on Purpose, how to expand your business without losing your best talent. And it really is an exploration in great detail around the 4 pillars of that model, which are aspiration, awareness, acceleration, and alignment. We don't have time to go into all of that, but it will be available on Amazon and my website. I am aiming for releasing that around January, and I just keep saying that out loud to hold myself accountable to try to meet that timeline.
There you go. So that sounds like it's going to be fun to do. Well, we've had a super in-depth discussion, just brilliant. Thank you very much for coming on. Give us your final pitch out to people on the show. How can they onboard with you? How can they reach out to you, see if they're a good fit, work with you, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, so connect with me on LinkedIn. That is my social media of choice. But really, the fast path to getting a conversation with me or getting connected with me, go to clairechandler.net. There's a big bright orange button on the top right of that screen that says Work with Claire. It does not require any sort of money to talk to me, but you can fill out an application. Let's have a conversation. And if I can help point you in the right direction or find an opportunity for us to partner up, I will enthusiastically do that.
There you go. And I think this came somewhere mid-show, but thanks, Chuck. I thought the stork brought babies to life. And you are correct, sir. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows it's the stork. It flies in just like the cartoons. So thank you very much for coming to the show, Claire. We really appreciate it. We've got your .coms and everything, right?
Yes, we do.
There you go. Thanks to my audience for tuning in. We couldn't do it without you for 15 years, 3 to 4 shows a day, 15 to 20 shows a week. If you're not watching every show, I got to tell you, and you've heard me say this before. Every show I come away with epiphanies, and I learn so much. And you would think that somebody like me, because of my astounding amount of brilliance, my incredible good lookingness, my Brad Pitt sort of exterior George Clooney mix, that I would know everything, but I don't. And I come out of these interviews that we do, and I learn something. So if you're not listening to the show and learning something, you can go back and listen to the show, that or put your phone down. Be sure to support the show wherever you can. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss. Support the big LinkedIn newsletter that's over there, the 130,000 group on LinkedIn that we built over, 10 years. Go to youtube.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the Tickety Talkety, and you can see all the Facebook groups. The main one to go to that you can chat with us now is chrisvossfacebook.com. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time.